Hey, welcome, Art 270ers. This is SMSU Art Education Summer School Edition, and today we are going to learn to draw positive and negative space. So we're going to be dealing with the printed word and why we train our young people to read black ink on white paper, and also how important it is in art for people to learn to see how we can use that black ink to create negative space to draw our students' attention in. So today we are going to spend some time doing that. But first, before we do that, we're going to learn how to draw some what we call bubble letters. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece of paper here. I'm going to fold my paper landscape. And then once I get it here and I've got the fold here, I'm going to push away from the two edges. That keeps them as close together as possible. Now, I usually like my fold to be very crisp, so I run my fingernails along it or I run something firm along it. Now, once I have my fold, what it did is it divided my paper in half. Now, I'm also going to talk about how we fill a page. So I'm going to take and fold my paper the long way, which is going to be portrait. And I want to make sure that that gets up against the edge. And then I'm going to push this way. So now what I've done is I've just made a small little, divided my paper in half, top and bottom. Now, before I write on here, I'm going to go to this piece of paper and I'm going to fold it one more time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my name, and we're going to do it in bubble letters. So the first thing I got to think about is, what is a bubble letter? Well, a bubble letter is anytime you draw a letter that looks like this. Now, how do we do this? Well, I'm going to draw my regular letter. This time I'm going to make my letter a little more square, and I'm going to make it look more like a capital J. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the game of operation. As I play the game of operation, I'm going to do it with a black Sharpie so you can see the line versus the pencil line. I'm going to draw a line that follows but does not touch that line. If it touches that line, then you get electrocuted like you do in the game of operation. So you want to be very careful not to cross that line. So notice how I went around. Now I'm going to come down and I'm going to go around like this. And I keep going around. And if I accidentally touched, I would get electrocuted. But I'm going to keep that line going. And it's going to go around until it comes to the end. Once it comes to the end, now I can do what everybody else usually does. And I'm just going to show you. I'm going to go, imagine I have this. And I have my pencil and my marker goes around. And I do it much faster this time. So it is not as neat. But I can now erase out my pencil. And now I have a hollow letter that can be filled with color. Things could be glued in it, a variety of things. So we're going to do some fun things like that. Now, just to point out, if I ask a child to do this, they will always indent. And they'll put their J here, they'll put their H here, and they're making them as big as they can. And look, they run out of space, so the end gets smaller and squished. How do we prevent that? Well, we prevent it by doing this. We number our letters 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a trick I learned in typewriting way back in the day on how to center something before we had the center button to click on. What I'm going to do is I am going to count my numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to do math here. I'm going to divide it by half, which is 2. What I get is 2. So my answer is halfway is 2. So I go 1, 2. There's the halfway mark. I go 1, 2, and I count backwards. There's the halfway mark. So now I can use this to center my letters. And also this line is where my bar for my H goes. So when I put it here, I know that my O has to be on this side of the center line that I made. And my H has to be equal. Now, what if I have a name that is bigger? So let's take Felicity. So Felicity. Totally random off the top of my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, it's equal. All right. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, half, 1, 2, 3, 4, half. All right, let's take Kevin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 5 divided by 2 equals 2 and 1 half. So now 1, 2, half, 1, 2, half. So the V would go in the middle. So if I was going to put it on this halfway, my V goes here. My I, notice how I'm doing this. Yep. And then my E would go next. And then I can fit my K in. There it is. Kevin. It fits equally pretty much across the top and the bottom. I've got equal space, and notice my letters are equal space. So what I'm going to do on here is, if I was to write John, John, which we had done earlier, and we had divided it. So my O, I'm going to put my H first. So my H would go, whoops, got to have this open. And I'm going to put that middle fold back so you can see it. So my H has to go on this side. So I want my H, and I want my word to fill the page. So there's my H. Here's my N. And they go approximately to the same height. Whoops, I'm going to lift this up a little bit so you can see it better. Then I'm going to put my O, equal spacing. And now my J. And if I wanted to put a spot up there, I could. Now I'm going to take my Sharpie, and I'm going to go around it. Simple process. Now I'm going to do my O. Now here's the challenge. When I do a letter that is got a center, I don't just redraw this line. This is difficult for kids. I have to do it on the inside. This is a new line of thinking. This is probably first, second, and third grade, and even some fourth graders. This is real challenging. They just want to redraw that line. Drawing to the inside to create the hollow part of the H. It's a development stage for them. Ooh, I came real close to touching there. And so sometimes it's one of those development stages that you have to show. So children don't see it. And because they can't see it, sometimes they can't make a logical choice on it. So sometimes if you're having a struggle teaching a child, it's not because they're not smart enough to get it or that they're not intelligent enough to comprehend. It's just that they haven't developed those skills yet. Now, when I have this all in place, so there's the word John. If I take my eraser next and I erase out all of my, and then they're gone, okay? But one of the things we're going to do is we're going to do this twice. So I'm going to do John on one sheet of paper, and if I fill it in, I'm now doing something that we call positive space. Positive space is where the ink is on the paper. So these letters are what we call positive space. They occupy the two-dimensional space of the paper. Now, why is space important? Well, space is a foundational element of art. There are 7 of them. And when I've discussed them in an earlier video, and we're going to talk about them a little bit with each assignment. So this one is space. And we're using the principle of design called balance because we filled it on either side. So we have equal balance. In a sense, we have symmetrical balance, even though the letters aren't the same, but the weight of the letters is the same. This gets into some heavy stuff. Now, this is called positive space. So on one of these, I'm going to color in my letters with a Sharpie to make them fill in. As they fill in, that becomes then positive space. What you notice when you look at this is you'll see that by just doing the outline of the letters, I get a lot of white. I got white on the inside. I got white on the outside. Positive space fills those in, and now it makes them stand out more. So when you're having children read and you're teaching them, you're having them look for sight words and words that they can see and make a pattern from. Well, black ink on white paper was the easiest way. Now, you want to complicate their life, is to now have them try to think in the negative. Now, the white here is the word, but the black is the ink that we've been trained to see as positive. So the positive space here has been reversed, and the black of the outside, all the shapes on the outside of the word are now positive space. The letters themselves are negative space. Artists use this technique to draw people's attention to something and have them wonder about it. This is a really cool technique, positive and negative space. So when we use positive and negative space, we're going to create two drawings of our name. They're going to occupy a whole sheet of paper. We're going to use a Sharpie to fill them in. Your name should be in positive space. Your name should be in negative space. A number of the projects that we're going to be doing here are going to be related to your name because it's the simplest thing to follow. All right, so the foundational element of space. It's where I start when I talk foundational elements. The state of Minnesota says that I'm required to talk about them with you and to go over them. So there it is, space.